closer than close.
Gloria Gaynor?
No.
Oh.
Closer than you ever can imagine. It's close, though.
Shall we sing it for him?
Rosie Gaines.
Rosie Gaines.
Yeah.
Gloria Gaynor,
I was
Rosie
so
Gaines.
close. Not even old enough to know that kind of stuff.
Oh, all right, Mark.
Gloria
That's
Gaynor.
a low blow.
Gloria Gaynor, listen, you'll survive, don't worry. Oh, there's another one. Anyway, Noni Madueke. He has been given permission to leave Chelsea's camp at the FIFA Club World Cup to pursue this deal with Arsenal. He's expected to have a medical with Arsenal very, very soon. I'll break down the deal for you. It has all been agreed. It's an initial payment of £48.5 million plus a further £3.5 million in performance-related add-ons. So in total, if he was to meet all of those performance-related conditions, the total cost of that deal could rise to £52 million. And he's already agreed in principle the terms on a 5-year contract with Arsenal. So this one is looking really, really close now. It looks like Madueke is going to be on his way back from the United States, back to the UK to take a medical with Arsenal. And we should see a formal announcement, all being well, in the next few days or so.
Arsenal fans jumping with glee at this one, Mark?
I think this is a really exciting signing. 23 years old, offers that versatility that Mikel Arteta likes from every signing, someone that can play in multiple positions. Dharmesh mentioned earlier on that having someone who could play as a right winger, and Arsenal perhaps lacked that bite and that spark when Bukayo Saka was injured last season, and Noni Madueke will certainly bring that. Just the 2 starts in the Club World Cup for Chelsea maybe was a little indication that he wasn't a part of the furniture moving forward. And when you look at the fee as well, it's very much in keeping with the other players that have moved over the course of this summer. It's all around £50 million, isn't it? You know, João Pedro 55 plus 5 from Brighton to Chelsea. Jamie Gitting's around 50 million as well from Borussia Dortmund. Anthony Elanga, when that one gets confirmed, from Nottingham Forest to Newcastle.
Yeah, the fees are also similar here, aren't they?
Yeah, 52 plus 3. So what you're seeing there is that's the market value for young players, young wingers that can be quite versatile in that front three. And anyone under the age of 25, between 20 and 25, that's the kind of price you're going to be paying. So that's one of the things why clubs like to get business done nice and early, that if that bar is set a lot higher than perhaps they're comfortable with, they're not caught in that mould of being, well, we've got to pay that because that's what he's worth, because that's what he went for. And that's why you see some teams get their business done nice and early. But looks like a really sensible piece of business for Arsenal, and I think he could be another one of those players.
This is what clubs are starting to do, though, because they are looking at the market value of certain players in that same position like Madueke, and Chelsea will have every right to say, well, if this player is going for this much money, then this is how we should value Noni Madueke at. It's the same with the whole Manchester United and Brian Mbeumo, because Brentford are probably thinking they bought Matheus Cunha for £62.5 million. So I think that's where we're going to start pitching what we want for Brian Mbeumo. But with regard to Madueke himself, make no mistake about it, this is not something Arsenal just thought about in this transfer window. They've kept an eye on his development now for the past couple of years in Madueke. Clearly, they've pinpointed areas in this transfer window where they need to strengthen. And I think, Mark alluded to it there, something that happened last season when they had all of these injuries, and maybe they thought when Saka was injured, yes, they had Ethan Nwaneri, but he was just coming into the team. Did they have anyone else who could go into that position who had Premier League experience previously and who could keep Arsenal at relatively a good level as maybe Saka was keeping him at? But now that they're looking at all of these other players and filling in the number 2 goalkeeper position, they've got their 2 midfielders in Norgard and Martin Zubimendi following the departures of Jorginho and Thomas Partey. They're starting to look at all of their squad and thinking, right, we found out where the holes are, let's fill them. And if you look at their squad strength now, Madueke, as Mark said there, can play on both wings. Add that to Gabriel Martinelli, Leandro Trossard, Bukayo Saka, Ethan Nwaneri, and you're starting to look at real strength in depth in those positions for Arsenal. Reece Nelson as well, he's still an Arsenal player.
How good of a move, though, is this for Madueke? Is he going to be going from a fringe player at Chelsea to a fringe player at Arsenal? Is he not a starter? Is that what we're saying?
No, he's going to have to fight for his place. I think Arsenal want to increase competition in every single area of that pitch. And because of his versatility, it won't just be a case of, if Bukayo Saka's injured, then Noni Madueke is going to get a game, because he can play on the left-hand side as well. He's shown he's versatile. And another thing that he's shown is that he always seems to be fit and available for Chelsea. And he's been a regular for them. And he's won trophies with Chelsea as well. So I think I think there was a little bit of pushback on social media, depending on whether that's a good gauge or not, from some Arsenal fans thinking, is this a good signing or not? He's an England international.
What would you say to the Arsenal fans?
Listen, I think Mark said it all there, but that the qualities of Noni Madueke, I think it is a good signing, if and when it does happen, and it will increase competition for Arsenal in those forward positions.
Yeah, and that's something that Arsenal definitely need, considering all the injuries that they had last season. OK, after the break, we've got more to discuss. We spoke to Portuguese football journalist David Novo earlier, and he brought us up to date with the striker's position with Sporting.
Sporting is not really happy with this situation. Of course, the way the player is behaving, the way the agents are behaving, and that's the problem. So if Gyökeres doesn't show up in the next couple of days, I think that, of course, maybe he can face a fine, some disciplinary punishment, for example. We don't know that. I think not even Sporting knows that by now. But of course, in terms of the player's point of view, of course, I think he's going to do everything to push for the transfer. We just don't know how not showing up for training can help the deal. That's the big question mark here in Portugal. What the player is expecting by not showing up. If he's expecting the Sporting to agree the deal, I don't think that things are going to be done that way. To be honest.
Well, it sounds like Gyökeres could be AWOL here, Mark. I mean, this sounds kind of unprecedented. Is this the right thing to do for Gyökeres?
Unprecedented, probably not. How many times have we spoke about players wanting potential moves, agitating for potential moves, some operating in a different way? The fact that Viktor Gyökeres is potentially not turning up for training when he should be, there are two things at play there. A, he's liable potentially to a fine, which may be a couple of weeks' wages, so he might be quite costly in that respect. But also, for him to take that action, you'd probably read between the lines and say he must feel that he has been treated unfairly by the club. There has been an agreement in place that is not being honoured. He's not being respected in the right way. He's had conversations with the president, with the owners, with people at the top of the tree, and he obviously feels that this is the action he needs to take to force through the move, to facilitate the venture to Arsenal, to also make quite clear his feelings on the situation. And you don't know how things will play out. Ultimately, it's a bit of a game of chess here, or a bit of a game of poker. You know, do you want to play hardball with the owners, the people that ultimately hold the cards, or do you want to go softly and just try and get things over the line? I can't help but feel this is a bit of a nasty situation that isn't ideal for anyone involved, and how it will end up, we don't quite know. You'd imagine it will be an Arsenal transfer, but there may be a few stumbling blocks in the road. And as Damesh so often says to me, you know, transfers are never that easy. You know, it's never straightforward. It's never simple. And this is one of those, it feels like it's going to get a little bit nasty between now and completion.
I got the impression, Damesh, that because Sporting gave Gyökeres allowed him to delay his return to training for pre-season, that they knew he was leaving and this was all on the cards. But I mean, now does the deal get done? Are they retracting that? Do they want him to stay?
It feels like the direction of travel is still that the deal is going to get done. But as Mark said there, it's a bit of a rocky road to get there, because it has been a little bit unsavoury in the last couple of months. It's got that way simply because, as Mark alluded to there, the feeling that Gyökeres might have had of a gentleman's agreement, shall we say, that if he stayed last season, then he could leave for a certain amount of money this time, which was believed to be a tad less than £60 million. Whereas when the Sporting president has been interviewed about it, he's been very, very pointed in saying he will not be leaving for that amount in this transfer window. So then you're thinking, did this gentleman's agreement exist? Is there anything such as a gentleman's agreement in today's football? Maybe yes, maybe no. But it still feels, because they gave him that extra time off, because he's still in that position where he doesn't really want to return, it can only really be resolved in one way, you would think, and that would be ending up that transfer to Arsenal. Arsenal will probably look at this and say, in one way, it's working in our favour because we want the player. Sporting probably don't want the player anymore, and Gyökeres wants to go to Arsenal. So when all those three elements come together, it usually ends up with one outcome and the player getting the move that he wants. But Sporting clearly will say yes at some point, but as much on their terms as they possibly can.
All these clubs just kind of posturing and sticking their chest out.
But it's millions of pounds at stake. And so many fans sit there on social media and say, just pay the extra 5 million, pay the extra 10 million. But ultimately, these clubs can't just keep doing that with every single deal.
Of course.
They have to be sensible, they have to be wise, they have to look at the finances, and obviously, you know, PSR is a huge factor in the game now. So it's quite flippant to say just give them the extra 5 million. But ultimately, these clubs have to run in the best way possible and be as sustainable as possible, and that means they have to watch the pennies.
Yeah, and for a player like Gyökeres that hit 54 goals in 52 competitions last season, you can understand why he's wanted. Are Arsenal the only ones that want him, though?
I mean, I don't know whether that matters now, because he's made it clear that the only club that he wants is Arsenal.
That's all he's got in his mind.
So that's all he's got in his mind now. I mean, Manchester United, there was a lot of interest earlier on in the window, but that was clear because of that link that Ruben Amorim has with Sporting. He played fantastic football under Ruben Amorim at Sporting as well. And there was talk of a couple of other clubs who were interested in Viktor Gyökeres, but it's emerged now that Arsenal seem to be the one club that are totally pursuing this deal, who have held talks with both the player and the club, and that the player, his mind is made up. He wants Arsenal.
So do Arsenal have the space then? I mean, because Sporting want more. Arsenal haven't paid it as of yet. Arsenal, do they have the ability to pay more when, as Mark says, every club is thinking about PSR?
It's a good question, actually. But if you go back 2 summers ago, Arsenal went pretty big in the transfer window, notably spending, I think it was £105 million on Declan Rice. Last summer, I think they kept quite a watchful eye on their PSR. And if you look at their business last summer, their 2 big signings were Mikel Merino and Ricardo Calafiori. They came in for a combined £75 million. And those 2 players in themselves were £30 million less than what they paid for one player the previous summer in Declan Rice. But because they were a little bit more cautious in last summer's transfer window, it put them in a really good place with regard to PSR heading into this summer's transfer window. Clearly they aren't finished, because we know they still want to do Viktor Gyökeres. We know that Eberiche Eze is a prime target of theirs. Christian Mosquera, the centre defender from Valencia, they're trying to do a good deal with him as well. They feel they can get a good deal done there because he's only got a year left on his contract. I think Valencia want in the region of £25 million. Arsenal don't want to pay that much. Maybe they can meet in the middle and then Arsenal can get some money off there. So to do all of those 3 deals, as well as the Madueke deal, we're talking in excess of 150 to 200 million pounds still.
And that's possible for Arsenal?
That Arsenal want to spend. It is possible, but Arsenal, like other clubs in their position, will have to be creative as well in the transfer market. Not only with the players that they buy, because they will try and do it in such a way whereby, right, let's try and load some performance-related add-ons in this fee, or let's try and make this an instalment payment maybe over 4 years rather than 3 years. They just need to be a little bit more creative. But also, and they will be creative, by the way, but also it's from a financial and a squad perspective as well. Financially, clearly, for the reasons I've just said, but from the squad perspective, there are going to be players who are in that Arsenal squad at the moment who are seeing all of these players coming in and maybe in their positions and thinking, I'm not going to get the game time that I want. So there will likely be sales at Arsenal at some point in the summer transfer window as well.
So they recoup some of that money. And you mentioned Eberiche Eze. I'm interested to know, like, particularly now that Palace have been demoted from the Europa League to the Europa Conference, is Eze going to become an Arsenal player he wants Champions League football, surely.
Yeah, I don't think that the Palace situation will have changed his mind about whether he would want to go to Arsenal or not. All the information that we have is that he is open to that move. Personal terms probably aren't going to be a problem with regard to Arsenal and Eberechi Eze. But what he does have, and what we talked about at the top of the show, is those famous two words now in this show, release clause. And that is a £60 million release clause plus £8 million in performance-related add-ons. So in total, that deal potentially could be worth £68 million. Now, Crystal Palace are under no pressure to sell Eberechi Eze, but they do know that if a club comes in and meets that release clause and Eze wants to talk to that club, he is free to do just that. Maybe Arsenal are exploring the possibility internally of meeting that release clause, but also what I mentioned before, shall we try and offer a little bit more in return for favourable payment terms? So all of these approaches will be going through Arsenal's mind when it comes to trying to sign someone like Eberechi Eze. But make no mistake about it, he is one of their priority targets in this transfer window, and we believe he's open to the move.
Okay.
And just while we're talking about Crystal Palace, huge news obviously with them being kicked out of the Europa League. Kave Solokol has been speaking to Steve Parish about this,
right.
And there is an exclusive interview coming up on Sky Sports News about all of his thoughts and feelings on this situation. So it's well worth tuning in from 8 o'clock to get Steve Parish on this very, very difficult situation that's going on at the moment.
Of course, and no doubt.
I think they'll get all of them.
Okay.
I think they'll get all of them. I think the noises coming out of the Eze camp was obviously, again, it's a release clause, so there's not a lot Crystal Palace can do, and Arsenal very keen. Darmesh actually said on the show last week that it wasn't just one winger and one striker. It was actually potentially a winger, a 10 and a striker. They were open to really revamping that front three. So I think they'll get all three of them, and I think Arsenal could be a real force next season.
Madueke one is close now. We said it earlier that he's been given permission by Chelsea to leave their camp at the FIFA Club World Cup. A deal has been agreed with Arsenal. It's £48.5 million initial payment, £3.5 million performance-related add-ons. He's agreed in principle the terms of a 5-year contract, and we expect him to have his medical in the next few days or so, with a formal announcement to follow that Madueke is indeed going to be an Arsenal player.
Arsenal fans will be very excited by this, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a lot of activity for Arsenal in the transfer market over the course of the last 4 or 5 summers. You get the feeling that if they get those players, they will have no excuses to not go on and be the force that they've been building over the last few years.
Wow, what an opportunity for Arsenal to challenge for that Premier League title next season. The transfer show